Okay. Item number 10 is other considerations. My name is on this only as an introductory last meeting, and we've discussed it during the meeting. I'm sure you've already heard it. Councilman Bradfield, as I had it like this. And he said, "Oh, I want to talk about this." And because of the way it came forward, it is under other considerations. Um, I will ask the council how they would like to proceed with this.
Well, can I say something before, just because I won't give you the whole spiel here. My only request has been to make a presentation. If the council deems it not necessary at this time, that is the determination of the council. My only request throughout this entire process has to be heard on the potential for voter districts. I am not here to demand that we implement. I'm going to switch over here. Does this work? I'm not here to demand that we implement voter districts during the election. The only request that I've had is that it be workshopped. And if council determined that it was not deemed important at the moment, then they would always have the opportunity to continue discussion. At this time, I accept that this is now under other consideration. All I ask is to be given the opportunity to present my case. And if council determines that it is not relevant at this time, which I believe it fully is, but you have the opportunity to make that decision, then please, by all means, delay discussion. But please grant me the opportunity to present the work. I had presented this in open council that I would be speaking to you. I made no secrets about my intentions here. I've made no secrets about my intentions anywhere. I just want the opportunity to present what the public has asked me to present for 2 years.
So one of the issues that I've had with this, and I mentioned this too on the phone when we spoke last week, was the timing of this. And I know that there's been questions as to why is the timing important. And the reason I think it's problematic is because we are in the current process of voting. I believe that we have 6 candidates that are all very capable and very qualified. And I think citizens should take into consideration the things that are important to them as a candidate. So that could be their work experience, it could be where they live, it could be their gender, it could be a variety of things. But to me, the issue that I had with this, and I told you this, Jess, is that when we raise an issue from council that draws attention to one specific thing for a specific candidate, to me, it feels like we're politicizing the work of council. And that has always been my biggest question with the timing of it. I certainly think it's an issue that is worth looking at. For me, it's always been that because, again, people have the right and they should look at candidates for the things that are important to them. And to me, I didn't see that there would be an issue if we postponed it 6 weeks or 6 months or 16 months because we're not going to have an election for a period of time. So to me, it was that idea that we're using a position with the city council to advocate for something that may disadvantage. And again, people have the right to vote for who they want to. I firmly believe we all represent all citizens of Logan. It's not that big of a town as far as driving. Again, willing to listen to what you have to say, but I just want people to understand that that's the reason that my question about the timing was raised. It was not an attempt to shut down discussion or to hide something. That's really my biggest concern.
And to answer that, and why I would like to present it now, is the very reason that we're in an election. The candidate running for office, and I have never named names.
Yes, you did last meeting. You named a specific candidate that's running.
I believe Holly named him, and then I just discussed it. But that's irrelevant. I have never disclosed a name or tried to use this to promote a candidate other than to say that the candidate running for office this year is an endangered species. We had 0 4 years ago. We had 2 out of 10 2 years ago. and we have 1 out of 7 this year. My intention, as I have always stated, and I hope nobody takes this as a promotion of any single candidate, my intention has always been to raise awareness, to hope that the people on the west side will understand that they will not get representation unless they take it to their hands and force the issue.
This is
And I
vote.
think that's the issue, though, is I do believe
But-
that they do have representation. It's just representation of people who may not reside as their neighbor in their immediate neighborhood. So, and I think that's,
And I don't mean representation in that concept. I mean, there will not be people running from the west side unless we can
Jess,
get
you're politicizing it right now. You are politicizing it.
In what way, Tom?
If it is such an urgent discussion, why is it so urgent that it be done in this 3 weeks, the final 3 weeks of the campaign? If it's important, then let's deliberate it in a way that is not calm. It's like discussing the rules of the football game at halftime.
I believe it's more like discussing the cruise-in during the cruise-in. I look at it and I see the relevancy is there. We don't wait to talk about snow removal in the middle of summer.
I object to the discussion proceeding right now because it's politicizing it.
Tom, all I have asked for is to present the data. I have no political motive.
Yes, I fully endorse the discussion, the fact that we ought to discuss it. I think it has merits, but we don't discuss it during the campaign. I've told you that 3 times.
Would this be an issue if there were 3 candidates on the west side?
yes, it would.
It would.
I don't believe that it would. The reason
Would
that
it-
this issue has come
No.
up is
Would
that
it be
nobody is running.
But
And there's
would it be-
reasons, and I intend to show those reasons.
But Jess, I will actually say that there are no barriers to running for city council. There are no barriers. You don't have to pay to file. I mean,
We're just,
I don't know what the barriers are to people running. And I hope that we all represent everyone. I get called by people from Ellis neighborhood and other neighborhoods just as much as I get called from the one that I'm theoretically attached to, which is Adams, but I'm not really attached to Adams because I live right downtown.
I wish that the council would allow me to show the data, to show that there are major barriers to entry to the lower income neighborhoods, that the highest, that Wilson and Hillcrest are making double the amount of money that the next,
But
that
why is
Woodruff
that?
is making.
Why is that a barrier to filing for election?
Because to run an at-large election costs between $5,000 and $10,000 for a council candidate to actually, the ones who have won over the past few years. This is, I believe, you can go and check those records. We're talking thousands of dollars. And $5,000 to someone who makes $40,000 is not $5,000 to someone who makes $80,000 and is networked into the system. We have good people who we say we want an at-large election, and so we want to keep it open and fair. But the very thing that we say keeps it open and fair is actually discriminating against the neighborhoods that are lower affluent, more minority, and have less of an income. And I have the data.
I don't think the data, I mean, I've seen your data. Again, I think, to me, the issue of the timing is this is not anything that's going to change between now and when our next election is. So again, it's the issue of the timing of the discussion. And, you know, as you've just said now, that you want to make sure people are aware of the importance of electing people from a certain district. And to me, that is politicizing.
I never said that. All I said is that I would like the West Side to understand they need to vote and they need to get out and participate.
But they could vote for 3 people who live outside of their community. I think it is important that people vote. Absolutely, 100%. I think it's important that people vote for 3 candidates too. You have 3 options of people, again, all qualified.
And Amy, they will be voting for people out of their
Can we set up a
neighborhood.
time to have a full discussion on this?
I respect the council's determination. I have always respected the council's determination. All I've asked for is the ability to make a presentation. The people who are here tonight came to hear a presentation about this. You don't see them up in arms and saying that we have to vote only for West Side candidates. Nobody's ever said that.
You just did.
Did I say we only have to vote for West Side?
You're making a political statement earlier.
Well, we are politicians, Tom.
But the point we're saying is that we're in the middle of the campaign. Why are we having the urgent? Why is this so urgent? You went to the press, you went to the radio. Why is it so urgent when this thing isn't going to be enacted for 2 years?
And why could we not take time to thoroughly vet it
Deliberate.
through all the neighborhoods and through perhaps?
Why is it that my request to speak continually gets delayed?
It is
I request to speak to the council and put it as a workshop, and it is delayed. I request to make a presentation to the council, and now you're saying that it has to go before the neighborhoods?
I think
Oh,
just
no,
the point
I
is if
said-
it can be
did not say that. I said I think we should get the neighborhoods, all the neighborhoods involved in the discussion.
But before we get the neighborhoods involved in this discussion, let us make a determination and a discussion amongst ourselves, reviewing the data, because it has changed since the last time that you looked at it. I've improved it. I've examined it. I've added data. There is more to this case. I am not here to endorse anyone, and I have said that 100 times.
Jess, can I ask, why is it so urgent at this very evening that it be done? What is so urgent that it be done right now?
I am not requesting that the council take a vote on this issue.
Why is it urgent that it be presented right now?
We discuss issues as they arise. This is merely a discussion. I have not asked the council for any kind of determination on the issue. It is a presentation on this moment in time and how we got here. And that is why it is urgent.
You have
urgency is
politicized
determined.
this whole thing.
Urgency is determined by relevancy, and there is no better or more relevant time to discuss an election than during an election.
That's ridiculous. That's like changing the rules in the middle of a football game. Let's discuss changing the football game rules.
Well, they do when in football.
We don't
I do
change
know
the
a little
rules.
bit.
We don't even talk about them.
I do know a little bit about football, and the commentators are actually determining if they're talking about it during the game, what they think about the rules.
I call
And
for
at
the
this
question.
moment, we are the commentators examining the current situation. There is no more better reason to examine something than relevancy. And it's relevant now.
I make a motion that
I pray that you do not shut me down, Tom.
I'm not shutting you down. I'm just postponing it.
All I want to do is make a presentation. There is absolutely no harm in a presentation. I'm not advocating anyone's elected. I'm here to say this is the situation. We're here. And if you want to postpone it after the presentation, then so be it. There will be no personal attacks.
I'll make a motion that this be, continued until
I ask that you do not shut down debate or discussion, excuse me.
what's the
Okay,
January?
you want to do the presentation, which is not discussion. So do you want to not have discussion? Do you not want to? You need to clarify what you want.
Part of discussion is the ability to speak. And if you take away my ability to speak, then you've shut down the discussion.
And your ability to speak is determined by your presentation. Is that correct?
That is the definition of speaking.
I'll ask again, how would you like to proceed?
Well, I made a motion that we postpone this until January.
Herm, are you still there? Is there a second to that motion? Motion dies from lack of second.
I would like to make a motion, though, that we allow a limited presentation that moves us towards identifying the process that we're going to use to advance this, including discussion of who would be involved in those meetings, the crafting of it. And I would ask that it clearly not be politicized, that there not be comments made about how people are misrepresented, that they're disenfranchised. If you want to present data, but to skew it to an opinion is I think what most of us are really concerned about.
Duly noted.
That was a super long motion.
A second.
And just in case there is a second, I will comply with those requests.
Do you want to second it?
Oh, I forgot that I was a council member for a moment. I will second that request to allow me to speak.
Any more discussion?
I'll add that I don't think that's a bad idea if we say this is the way we're going to approach it, not with the merits of the situation. And I have ideas, but we can vote on this first.
May I ask one clarification before we vote? What do you consider limited?
5 minutes.
I would request 10. I think the school district got at least 15, so.
No, they got 10. He had a bell.
All right. So if the school
10
district
minutes
got
and
10,
15 seconds.
I would request 15, and I will go as fast as I can to end it at 10, if that would be
We're not
possible.
receiving a presentation. We're talking about a methodology.
No, the motion on the floor is to let Jess do a 10-minute presentation that is not political.
No, I said he could present his information. But I would kind of feel I would prefer 5 minutes, to be honest with you. That would be my preference, is to present the facts without interpretation, and then we can discuss based on that how to move forward with looking at an ordinance.
I don't know that I could present within the parameter of 5 minutes, a 40-page PowerPoint and years of research into 5 minutes. Please, 10 minutes. And I will, again, give me 10, I'll try for 5. I just don't want to be gavelled.
Why don't we take the proper time?
I'd like to set up the proper time. I'd like to set this up for the proper time.
Let's do it.
All right.
January.
So where are we? Have you agreed to?
We're on a motion.
I know we are, but what? You said 5 minutes. You said 10 minutes.
All right, let's go for 5. Just don't gavel me, Chair Jeannie.
Have to vote.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. And since Herm is gone, we can just do the aye thing.
Aye.
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 No.
The high points, Jess.
All right. You may start the timer.
You're going to set a timer, or you want me to?
I'll set it.
Okay.
I will set that timer. Okay. The history of how we got to where we're at. Very simply. In 2008, Councilors Pfeiffer and Monson introduced representation discussion in a workshop. They presented a hybrid district at large idea presented with the intent to encourage dialogue, just as I am doing currently. Chair Pfeiffer explained that Logan had doubled in size. They needed a new election-based system. Councilmember Monson pointed out that most cities in the state were Logan size or larger had districted or combination systems. Councilmember agreed that it was appropriate to discuss changes to the election system, even though we may conclude that we may not need a change. Steve Thompson declared, "There is a certain group of people you will never educate. If it's not broken, don't fix it."
Just, I will give you a couple more seconds. Tammy Pfeiffer did call the Kimber today to say that she was absolutely in favor of at-large voting, that she was aware that the discussion that you had included that, and she wanted us to know that, and the community to know that she felt very comfortable with the decision that was made at that time.
Very good. My understanding is that Representative Monson feels the opposite. However, I will not speak for him at this time. I believe that's his position, but I'll let him say it himself. Councilmember Olson agreed. Okay, the workshop discussion happened, and it so happened that she proposed an at-large because the discussion turned towards that. And then in November of 2008, a public hearing was set for at-large elections. In favor of at-large elections was Pfeiffer, Swenson, and Monson, and not in favor of these elections was Olson and Thompson. They discussed the objectives of what they wanted to accomplish when they put this in motion. They said they wanted to improve Logan's election system. They wanted to use the existing county boundaries that would alleviate gerrymandering. This is all part of the discussion. They wanted to allow options for citizens who could not afford expense of citywide campaigning. And so what I'm saying is not new. This is a 10-year-old discussion. Assure some amount of geographic distribution of council members. Kimber Housley explained that there was a practical reason to have numbered seats, to know what seats are up for election, to identify the seat only. Councilmember Olson would rather put it to a vote with the proposal of 3 districts and 2 at large, very similar to the one that I'm putting forward. And Monson put forward a motion for at-large districts, and it passed. And my question is, did the ordinance accomplish its stated objectives? And I intend to show that it did not, and further discussion is needed. Declared seat voting system used prior to 2009. Prior to 2009, the system that was used is that they had a at-large system, but you had to declare which seat you were running for, and there were 5 seats, and so you chose the seat. It often put people in a more head-to-head kind of race, and I will take you through a crash course of what it looked like over the years. Here's the council, and I have 20 more years of data that support my conclusion that I will not politicize. Council from 2002 to 2004 looked like this: 2 west side, 3 east side, 3 west side, 2 east side, 3 west side, 2 east side, 2 west side, 3 east side, and then a seat was appointed. And then we went into 2009 and had at-large voting initiated because of this discussion that I mentioned earlier. Logan demographics: the city is split in half. All right, so it's roughly 49% to 51%, west side 49, but we believe that it's likely to increase to over 50% given the new census that will be coming out, because that's where the development and the growth is. And Adams, Hillcrest, and Wilson probably have roughly 49% now, but that data has yet to be seen. All right, the neighborhoods are you can see them. Take a mental picture of them. The median income of Hillcrest is double anything that it is on the west side. Adams is particularly hard hit, and that is on the east side, but they also don't have many representatives over the years, almost none. Hillcrest makes 80, Wilson makes 50, Woodruff 40, 35 for Ellis, 35 for Bridger, and of course those poor students in USU. 35 and older on discussing what the demographics of age throughout the city. Voting is higher among persons in upper income brackets. And so I forgot to say that. Voting is higher among people in upper income brackets. Would the council, have I politicized this at all? I would ask that you will allow me to continue.
I think keep going. Let's
Voting is higher
Fast,
among
fast, fast, though.
voting among persons in upper income brackets is proven to be higher. These are all public statistics. Most of them I got through PBS, very milquetoast. Anyone above 50,000 among adults and families with incomes of at least 50,000, upwards of 70% of individuals are likely. And as you'll see, we have multiple neighborhoods who do not hit that threshold. Those ages 30 and up, all right, are most likely to vote, with older populations much more likely to vote. The most aged neighborhoods would be the most likely to vote. And as you can see, Hillcrest has the most aged population along with Wilson, and it roughly follows the same pattern as all of the other scales that I told you about. Owner-occupied housing, renter-occupied. Hillcrest has 90% owner-occupied. Wilson has 65% nearly owner-occupied, and then it follows the same scale that I discussed earlier, with all the other neighborhoods straggling. Housing units. Take a look at this graph. This is single family, attached and detached. Jeannie, what is the 1 unit attached? I did have some question on that. That's a duplex, correct? Or is that?
It can be, I would think it's a single family, 1 unit attached is 2 houses attached together. Townhome.
Hillcrest. They will now enter the 1% of having 2 or more units, because as of this study, they had 100%. And as you know, younger families are more likely to live in a variety of housing other than single family housing, which means that the higher density you put in, they're less likely to vote.
All the student housing is in Hillcrest.
That
Why
is
is that not
correct, but they
represented?
are counted as transient, and that is they are not counted for most purposes.
But that's the housing units.
That's counted as it's. Mike, can you speak to that?
Yep.
And if you take a look at that, it is not an equal chart. So even if you add in USU, the population does not make it as high for that type of housing as it does in the other neighborhoods.
But USU isn't a neighborhood by itself. It's part of Hillcrest.
Correct.
So
Correct. So
it skews the figures.
It does not skew the figures, because if you add them in, we're talking students who are very unlikely to vote. And if you take them out,
we're talking about housing type. And if you're saying Hillcrest is 100% single family, what do you say?
if you would like
1
those
unit detached, and then it's
Madam Chair, if you would like those included, I can ask.
No, that's
I can
fine.
ask the city to include them. It will be much lower than anyone else for the purpose, because the numbers, it's a numbers game. And if you add in USU, they have a lower population than anyone else. They only have 2,000 as opposed to everyone else has in the 4 to 6 to 12,000. So we can add that in and see what it looks like. Hispanic or Latino population. Based on voter data, Hispanics are one of the least likely demographics to vote. Based on PBS, based on Elect Project, based on everything. Doing districts could encourage, we need to encourage local minority populations to get invigorated and know their representatives and run themselves. We need their perspective to count in the public. And I know that the argument against that is that they do, but my argument is that it needs more of a representation given the demographic. In Woodruff, we have almost 30%, likely above that now. Hillcrest has 1. If you add in USU, you might get up to 5% there. Wilson has 5. Everything is inverted now, the relationship. All right, from what it was. Income is higher, minority status lower. I'm not saying that anyone's racist. Don't interpret it that way. I'm saying they don't live there. Hispanic or Latino population growth. Take a look at that chart. You're going to see that I'll say the same thing that I said before, and I don't want to politicize it. But Hispanics are one of the least likely demographics to vote, which means that they will have an underrepresented on the council population.
Are there some highlights you want to make sure you hit, since I know we're over 5 minutes?
I'm almost done.
Okay.
I'm almost done. At-large voting, there are 8 voting precincts that determine the elections. You can bank on it. I will bet you 100% that the districts I'm about to show you will determine the fate of the election. And if they don't, I'll step down. I'm that positive. There are less than they are 50% of all voters, and they are less than 30% of the population total in the 27, I believe. No candidate has won an election without these precincts, and I will go in order of top to bottom. All right, take a look at that. Based on the data that I provided, to win an election, when I ran for office, I want people to know, and I want it to be on record. People told me to avoid my neighborhood. Go to the bench, they said. The Hill controls this town. Go to the bench. Go back and forth. You'll win this city. Based on the data that I show you, where do you predict that council will be from the time that they institute at-large elections? The council has one representative after the election of 2009. The precincts that are overrepresented and 50% of all voters have 4. They have 4 again the next election. One more was appointed, which created 4 incumbents. No one from the West Side ran that year. We had 4 again. We had 4 again. We had 4 again. We have 4 again. And this year, we may have 4 again. My proposal is very simple. It is an ordinance implementing by-district elections, council members, and for the purpose of fair and equitable distribution of representation and equality, accessible candidates with a good understanding of the locale neighbors, increased voter participation, and allowing options for citizens who are unable to afford the expense of a citywide campaign that is daunting. When you try to run a citywide campaign in a city that has, I had it on here, let me go fast, 11,700 acres. And you have to hit all of them if you are not as well as affluent as other people or well known and you don't have money to spend on the marketing. It is daunting. All right, and I will try to wrap up here. Now I ask you again, looking at the data, and even with Ms. Pfeiffer's phone call today, did at-large elections accomplish what they set out to achieve?
So Jess,
And my proposed options would be option 1, 2 West Side council seats, 2 East Side council seats, and 1 at-large council seat. And I presented 2 because I wanted to be flexible for the council. I did not want to present rigid policy or ordinances, so I presented 2 options, and of course, council has full control. And I said, well, we could split it up among the neighborhoods as well, because we already have that system set up, so why wouldn't they? It makes sense to just report in through the neighborhoods. And I will not go into that because I did explain that I would not.
So I would
Thank you.
actually like to make a suggestion and see what people think about identifying a subcommittee to look into this. That would include someone from our legal department, that would include our city clerk, since she's the one who's in charge of elections, to include the chairs of community councils for those that have chairs, and then at least 2 council members. That would be my suggestion, that we establish a subcommittee, and because we are in the the middle of election, it would be to have that group begin to do their work in January. That's what I would think would be a way to address this.
I agree with that.
Would you like to make a motion?
I can make a motion that we appoint a subcommittee after January 1st that consists of representation from Logan City Legal Department, the city clerk, the chairs of the community councils, and 2 council members
Chosen by the chair?
chosen by the chair. Thanks for that
Would you,
addition.
would you second that? Do you want to second it, Jess? You had said yes.
And this will be started in the new year, so I suppose the new
After
chair will
January.
be determining those. I will second that. Or I will second that, yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you all.
Did you say aye?
Aye. I thank you.
I guess I'd like to make a comment. I opposed this earlier just to have the discussion now because I felt it was politicized. I am in favor of looking at it seriously, and I do want the other West Side neighborhood to be equally represented. I do. I just felt like the discussion at this time was inappropriate.
I don't think
Can
any
I
of
get
us-
it on record, though? Did you believe that that presentation was inappropriate at all?
I felt like bringing it up at this time was inappropriate, but that's the way it is.
All right.
And I think all of us, individually and collectively, believed that having the discussion was appropriate. We just were questioning when the timing was for that discussion. I feel like if you're electing a new council, they're hard pressed to jump in the middle of a discussion. So it would be better off if they started it anew when they are elected.
My hesitation, just so I can be on the record, with waiting, was that I had approached each council member individually, and they said that they were not overly excited about this. So I was not trying to jump the gun. My intention was to make sure that it got the proper attention that it deserved so that it could proceed in discussion, which is the outcome. And I couldn't be happier. Thank you very much.
Good. I'm glad you're happy. That was an important part.
No, that's.
We are adjourned as city council.